Welcome back, Eric, to the video. Today we are back from an NFL video. This time, continuing our player prediction series for the offseason. This time to the New York Giants, and I decided to talk about Daniel Jones for this video. I feel like he was kind of the obvious choice because last year he had his biggest and probably best year of his career. And the Giants were actually a pretty exciting team, so I was pretty excited to actually be able to talk about Daniel Jones and the Giants offense going into next year. Before we get into it, just so you guys know, I do Madden and NFL videos. NFL, we do videos like this. We do the player predictions. We do NFL tier list videos, week picks when the season's going on, and all NFL news stuff, of course, while the season's going on, and off-season stuff. Madden, we do theme team series, pack openings, gameplays, all that kind of stuff. But Madden videos are down a bit right now until Madden 24 comes back. Still doing some, just not as frequent, but we'll have a good mix come fall. So anyway, into the Daniel Jones video. Now, I don't want to talk about the entire offense too much because that's going to be its own video later this offseason where we talk about each individual team and predicting them. So I want to try and focus on Daniel Jones, and we're going to start out, I think, looking at his games from last year to kind of get a good recap going. So first off, I mean, honestly, I had to watch a little bit of kind of his highlights of his tape from this past year because I liked watching Daniel Jones, honestly, but I didn't watch like full Giants games, just kind of like on red zone, you see rushing touchdowns, you see Daniel Jones actually, playing pretty well. That's really the extent of what I was really seeing when it came to Daniel Jones. So I decided to, really to prepare for this video, and like I do most videos, kind of watch a lot more of him. And he, honestly, it's so crazy because he like has a pretty like natural way about him of just like extending plays and just taking off all of a sudden. Like when you don't think he will, he just like gets right out of the pocket. It's actually pretty exciting, and honestly, I mean, that's been like one of his strengths for a while, but to see him develop as a bit of a passer this year and under a new coach, it was pretty exciting. So Daniel Jones last year, a few games to highlight. He threw for his most yards, I believe, against Minnesota and that 3-point loss, although he did get his revenge in the playoffs when they did beat Minnesota. He did beat Panthers, of course, because everybody beats the Panthers because that's just my team. That's just how it goes. But Daniel Jones also, another game I wanted to highlight, the Lions. He also threw for 300 yards, 341 yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 interceptions. Now, another thing to note about that game, that's the only game all year he threw 2 interceptions, which is very solid, especially considering that game he threw 44 times. So 44 times, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. That's not that, out of the question. That's pretty standard for that. Also, I should have probably started out with this, but he finished the season with 3,205 passing yards, 15 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. I don't know if it has his rushing. Yeah, 7 rushing touchdowns as well, which they didn't count. So technically, 22 total touchdowns to 5 interceptions. Daniel Jones did a great job of taking care of the ball this year and really finding the end zone. So that was huge for the Giants because they had a great start. I want to say, 7-1, I think, at one point, or maybe they came down to 7-2. I know they were 5-1 at one point, so really, I mean, that was a crazy start. I'm not sure if anybody expected that. Now, going into next year, there are some things to note, and usually when it comes to this video, I'll have like kind of other tabs up and things I want to talk about as far as like how he finished among other passers and all that kind of stuff. I kind of want to stray away from that, at least for him, because I feel like everything we need to know about Daniel Jones and the Giants offense is kind of just on ESPN and looking at this. So for those of you that don't know, I could go to the Giants. Here, this is what we'll do. We'll go to the Giants and we'll go to transactions just so you guys can see this as well because I've already, of course, looked at this. And we'll just kind of leave it right here for you guys, and I'll zoom in. So if there's anything you guys want to see there, but I already kind of know where I want to go from here. But the Giants have actually had a pretty good offseason. Now, unfortunately, heartbreaking enough, they did let go of Kenny Golladay. I'm sure all Giants fans out there are just absolutely devastated because he, obviously did incredible for all that money. I think maybe 1 total touchdown. So, you guys are going to miss him. That's a brutal loss. But thankfully, you guys did re-sign Isaiah Hodgins. You have Darius Slayton coming back, who I think is incredibly underrated. That's another thing I wanted to talk about real quick, is that, like, in a lot of those Daniel Jones plays, Darius Slayton was, like, the receiver on, like, the other end of those plays a lot. Like, I think he's very underrated. Sterling Shepard, I believe, is still on the team, although I think he tore his ACL last year, so I'm not sure how high up in the depth chart he is. But you re-sign Isaiah Hodgins. You still have Darius Slayton, and then you also go out and sign Paris Campbell from the Colts. I think it's a great signing. Campbell was actually very solid on a horrible Colts offense with Matt Ryan last year, so that's definitely a very solid signing. Probably the biggest signing that I think many of you that click on this video want to see, other than Daniel Jones, that to see talked about, though, is Darren Waller. So the Giants went out and signed Darren Waller from the Raiders. The Raiders eventually drafted Michael Mayer to replace him. But that gets Daniel Jones a very solid tight end target. Darren Waller, honestly, when he is healthy, he is one of the better tight ends in the league, but he just struggles with injuries so much. But sometimes, I mean, really, just especially mentally for a player, a fresh start could really mean all the difference. So Darren Waller coming over to New York, I think is just an absolutely incredible pickup. It's going to help out Daniel Jones a lot, and hopefully Darren Waller a lot as well to kind of, like I said, start new offense, new coach with a very good coach at that. And, you know, I really like it. I like Daniel Jones' weapons a lot. They drafted Jalen Hyatt from Tennessee, though I'm going to be honest, I don't know how much he's going to do his rookie year. As you guys can see, also May 15th, they also, officially signed Jalen Hyatt. He was a very questionable prospect. He had that crazy game against Alabama with like 4 or 5 touchdowns by himself as a wide receiver. But as a prospect, his route running, I think, was questionable. His speed was not questionable at all because he is unbelievably fast. But I think overall, as an entire, receiver, everything you look for as far as, route running, separation, release, all that kind of stuff, maybe a little questionable for Jalen Hyatt. And I think so far from OTAs, there wasn't anything to write home about. So I'm not counting on him making a huge difference his rookie year unless something unexpected happens. But you know what? Sports unexpected, so you never know. He might make a huge difference. But for this video, I'm not really going to include him as a big weapon I see for Daniel Jones, at least yet. The other thing I wanted to talk about is Saquon Barkley. Now, Saquon, I don't think has officially signed to the Giants. I think it sounds like he's still in contract talks or wants something figured out. I'm going to be honest, I don't really think it's going to matter. I cannot see him leaving, especially this far into the offseason, with them actually having a very decent year last year. I really think anything there is going to be worked out, and it's not a big deal. Even in fantasy drafts and fantasy football, he's still being taken very high up. I don't think anyone has a question about Saquon Barkley, which, to be fair, if he even did go to another team, I think people would still probably draft him pretty high. But again, I don't think it's anything to worry about. So I'm counting him as another big weapon for Daniel Jones. And I wanted to also emphasize this, that I think for a lot of Daniel Jones' career, he hasn't had the craziest weapons. Now, it's not an excuse for how poor he's played in the past, but it definitely adds to it. And, he didn't have a whole lot of help for a while. But now it seems like everything's really clicking. I think Brian Daboll, the coach, was really a big missing piece for them that they really needed. And he filled in that missing piece perfectly, brought a brand new culture to the Giants. And, I mean, they were a team to beat last year. They were at the top of the league for a time. But something to note going into next year. Now, other than Daniel Jones' weapons and his big improvements, his contract. He got signed for a lot. I know it's over here, and I want to find it real quick. It says, sign Daniel Jones to a 4-year contract extension. It doesn't have the money on there. Okay, I'm pretty sure it was like, was it $45 million? I'm going to make sure just in case. And yeah, I did check. They signed him to $160 million for 4 years, which equates to about $40 million a year. So I was fairly close on that. People had some split emotions when it came to this, as far as like quite the overpay after one decent year. I kind of fall somewhere in between because I can understand both sides. For one, I don't think maybe he wasn't worth that much money, but on the other hand, if this is just the start and Daniel Jones is finally actually hitting his potential, that might be a pretty good deal if he can continue to play like this in the years to come. So I think it's a little too early to say a big overpay. I think this will be a big year to see if last year was a fluke or if he continues to play this pretty high level he was playing at. So I'm not going to talk too much about the contract as far as like if it was too much or too little maybe, or everything in between. I'm just going to leave it at that. I think only time will tell, but if you guys have an opinion on it, definitely let me know down below, because I know that was a big talking point when it came to the Giants, especially Daniel Jones this offseason. And now that we're approaching the end of the video, I do want to talk about one more thing coming back over to last year, because I think this is going to be a major factor going into next year for Daniel Jones. And not to state the obvious, but the division is very, very tough. A couple years ago, we'd be saying it's probably the worst division in football, but here we are with Dallas, Philadelphia, Washington, and New York now being incredibly competitive. Now, to look at last year, they tied Washington and then beat Washington. They lost to the Eagles. I believe they either lost to the Eagles or beat the Eagles second time. I can't even remember, and I'm not going to count it because none of the starters played. That's why it's not even listed here, because Daniel Jones didn't play. So I'm not even going to count that game as anything. They also lost to Dallas by 7 and then lost to Dallas again by, is it 8 or 6? I think it's 8. So it is very close. They are definitely very competitive in there. Now, I would say they are probably the lower tier in the division. If there's 4 teams, I would probably say Dallas and Philadelphia are on the top tier, and then the Giants and Washington are on the bottom tier of that division. But Dallas is starting to struggle a little bit. I think the Eagles got stronger, but Dallas might be kind of shaking. So this would be the time for the Giants to kind of leapfrog. But yeah, I do think it's a big talking point, though, because it's not like he's going to have some cakewalk. And nothing in the NFL is a cakewalk. But if you want to look at, like, we'll say Bryce Young and the Panthers, I'm a big Panthers fan. Bryce Young has an incredible opportunity to have a great season because that division is horrible. That is by far the worst division in football. Maybe not by far, but it's definitely the worst division in football. And that's just not the case here. I mean, every game matters in the NFL. That's why I love the NFL, but especially in that division, every game is going to mean a whole lot more because all the teams are going to be incredibly close. I remember last year there was a point in the year where mathematically all the teams could have made the playoffs. So, and I do expect it to be very tight next year as well. So Daniel Jones is definitely going to have some high competition, but I do think he has some great weapons around him. I think New York has done a pretty decent job at getting him help, like Darren Waller, trying to keep Saquon. I think Isaiah Hodgins is very underrated, and he might take a bit of a step next season. Paris Campbell was a great addition to go out and get him. And I'm forgetting someone, Darius Slayton again, who I think is very underrated. And then Sterling Shepard, if he comes back healthy, again, great receiver too. Guys, all in all, Daniel Jones finished last year with 3,205 yards, 15 touchdowns to only 5 interceptions. Counting his rushing touchdowns, he had 22 total touchdowns. He was very careful with the ball, and honestly, that was the difference maker because other times his decision may be a little questionable and maybe wasn't making the best reads, but last year he proved he can definitely do that, and sometimes that really is the difference a new coach confidence can really have in a player. So I do think next year will be a good year for Daniel Jones. I think he stays hot, and I would not be surprised if New York really does get a little competitive with Dallas to try and get that number 2 spot in the division. Right now I have the Eagles on top, Washington on the bottom, and then Dallas and New York fight for that 2nd spot. I think it'll be pretty close. I guess I'll talk about that more in the actual team prediction videos, but I think Daniel Jones is in for a big year as long as he continues to build on this. Brian Daboll has a new culture there, good weapons all around. I mean, I don't see how he could regress from this. So that's going to do it for the video. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you guys are new around here, or if you do like NFL content, because like I said before at the beginning of the video, I do both Madden and NFL videos. So thank you guys for watching. I do appreciate it. I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.